You know, the governor of Texas criticized the governor of Massachusetts for Romneycare, but he wrote a really fancy letter supporting Hillary Care, so we probably ought to ask him about that.
Known as Hillary Care. Speaking of letters, I was more interested in the one that you wrote to Ronald Reagan back and said, I'm going to quit the party because of the things you believe in.
Willingham was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, even though he insisted he was innocent. And in the years afterward, evidence grew that the testimony that convicted Willingham was based on junk science. In fact, right before the execution, a leading arson expert filed a report with Governor Rick Perry's office saying Willingham didn't do it and requesting a reprieve. Perry refused, and Todd Willingham was executed by the state on February 16, 2004. But the troubling questions lived on. 5 years later, an investigator discredited the forensics used in the trial and determined conclusively that Willingham was innocent, saying, quote, "A finding of arson could not be sustained," and that the fire marshal's key testimony at the trial was, quote, "hardly consistent with a scientific mindset and is more characteristic of mystics or psychics." But just 2 days before that expert was to testify before a commission looking into the case, Rick Perry fired 3 members of the commission, replaced them with his own appointees, who promptly canceled the meeting. Did Perry act so the truth of the investigation wouldn't come out?
Rick Perry is an idiot, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
From Texas, serving in my 10th term, I am the champion of the Constitution.
You get the sense that the country is desperate for someone to show us the way. Not the old way, not the same way, but a new way. Ron Paul, who raised more than $5 million in the third quarter, trailing not far behind fellow Republicans like John McCain and Fred Thompson. Ron Paul, who has a huge internet following. He's a congressman, a physician who's delivered more than 4,000 babies. Ron Paul has been married to the same woman for 50 years, which means he doesn't come to the race with a lot of the assorted baggage that some of the other candidates for the White House do. So here's the question. Should more people be listening to what Ron Paul has to say?
Ron Paul! Ron Paul! Ron Paul! Ron Paul!
We have allowed our nation to be overtaxed and overregulated and overrun by bureaucrats. The founders would be ashamed of us for what we're putting up with. Matter of fact, if you look at every single problem we're facing today, it's because of the lack of respect for the rule of law and the Constitution.
The right guy is the guy who's anti-government, anti-war, pro-personal liberty, pro-economic freedom. Vote for him, whatever party he is. And if you have to change parties to vote, that's like 5 clicks on the internet. It's not complicated. If you really want to have a choice between a real revolutionary candidate and someone out of a machine, well, this can happen.
Ron Paul brings together people of all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all political affiliations, because freedom is truth, and truth is power, and we can live and be free in this country if we believe we can.
John writes from West Virginia, yes, more people should listen. A rarity. A man of principle, integrity, and high values running for president. Exactly what America needs in this day and age.
If you were president, would you work to phase out the IRS?
Immediately.
That's what they call a softball.
And you can only do that if you change our ideas about what the role of government ought to be. If you think the government has to take care of us from cradle to grave, and if you think our government should police the world and spend hundreds of billions of dollars on a foreign policy that we cannot manage, you can't get rid of the IRS. But if you want to lower taxes, and if you want the government to quit printing the money to come up with shortfall and cause all the inflation, you have to change policy.